Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome Kara Brown, founder and chief executive officer at Lead Coverage. Thanks for joining us today, Kara.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited about today, mostly because I have been a big fan, longtime fan. Longtime listener, first time caller of Lead Coverage. But it's we're getting into, kind of the secret sauce behind what you guys have and also some of those elusive marketing things. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and why you started Lead Coverage.
Thanks so much for having me. Also a big fan from afar. You get to work with my team very, very often, but you and I only get to cross paths at normally FreightWaves conferences is usually where we see each other. So I am Kara Brown. I am the founder and CEO of Lead Coverage, and we are the largest go-to-market agency that really serves only the supply chain and logistics space. So there's 42 of us full-time. We're pretty big as agencies go. We're definitely big to be as niche as we are, and we just absolutely adore the space. We've been doing this for almost 10 years. My partner, Will Haraway, and I had two separate agencies and merged them together in 2019. And we're just having a blast. We're having so much fun. My background is Echo, Seco, Geodis. So I come from the space for many, many years. And I'm just thrilled to be able to bring new, fresh, go-to-market expertise and strategies to a space that I have just adored for the last 20 years.
I absolutely love that. It's you can always tell who's been a logistics or a supply chain lifer, whether or not we want to be in it or not. It just keeps sucking you in. But you can always tell kind of when someone knows what they're doing and what they're talking about and understands the space more than someone who's just like, I am a marketing agency and we're so great at all of these things, but they really have no concept of how logistics or supply chain works.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things, is when we're able to really make an impact for a broker or freight tech or a carrier or someone else that touches the space in a way that other marketing shops haven't been able to because they just didn't really understand what they did. Cross-border is a big kind of piece of that right now, just because the compound annual growth rate at cross-border freight is just out of control. And I actually had a conversation with a couple of prospects or clients where they said, hey, we're growing, our cross-border has grown. And I'm like, yeah, did it grow in the end of 2023 too, in all of 2023? And yeah, it's great. And I'm like, great. So has the rest of the marketplace. So bravo, you were ready for the growth, but let's be honest about sort of our growth versus the market. And I think most marketing shops that don't specialize in in supply chain specifically would not be able to have that conversation. Mary, I am also totally useless in any other space, right? So if this doesn't work, I don't have anywhere to go. I'm beauty, retail, e-com, I'm useless in healthcare. I've spent so much time and energy learning the space, working in corporate, being, writing 60,000 words about it in a book. I would be useless in any other vertical. So I'm really glad that the supply chain space has chosen to keep me, because otherwise I'd be in big trouble.
I have also found the same thing that, supply chain has, I've tried to leave a few times unsuccessfully, obviously. And it's kind of once you're in, everybody gets really excited when they see that supply chain and you can't leave. You understand this crazy world. And it's kind of like that amorphous blob or a black hole, depending on how you want to look at it.
People ask me specifically, folks that ask, what's next for the business, private equity type guys, what are you going to do next, right? And I'm are you going to move to a different space? I don't understand this question. This is a $2 trillion market that I have barely scratched the surface on. I'm good. We've got lots and lots of opportunity for growth in front of us. And so I think that's one of my favorite things is, even if you think that everyone in supply chain. I met a guy at the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year event. They have a strategic growth forum, and he and I had a meeting. They set up meetings for us. He's a bulk mover of oil and gas out of Philadelphia. So we're just having a chat, and I start throwing out names, just people in the space that I know. And he's like, nope, don't know them, never heard of them, no idea. And I was like, all right, like there's a whole world that this person knows that I have not tapped into. Like, holy cow. So I was like, all right, like tell me who you know. And I need to get to know this whole other group of people that are technically in supply chain, but they're just not brokers, carriers, or fintech or freight tech. Like they're in a different part of the space. And that's international too, right? Like there's a whole rest of the globe that does what we do here, just in a different part of the world. So yeah, I love it. It's my favorite.
So what's next is total world domination.
Yeah. Hashtag empire. There may or may not be an announcement coming out at the end of the year. So yes, we'll see some sort of growth from the lead coverage team that we're super excited about.
I am so excited for you guys. But before we get to the end of the year and this mystery announcement, you wrote a book, specifically this book.
Hey.
It's an Amazon bestseller. Fun fact. And which you knew that, we all knew that. Where none of us are surprised by it. But basically, what prompted you to write this book? Because you kind of took all the secrets that are wrapped up into lead coverage and shared it with the world. What made you say, this is how I want to do it versus just, having a lead coverage tell-all or, whatever else you were going to do?
I started my career on the floor of Echo Global Logistics, and I got to work directly for Doug Wagner. It was an incredible opportunity, and I loved every minute of that experience. But throughout my entire career, I've always been the marketing girl, right? And you don't have a seat at the table. You have to show all of your work in one slide. You have to prove your value in one slide. In general, I saw sort of a dearth, a missing sort of component in our supply chain clients when it comes to really strong go-to-market. And when I use the word go-to-market, I really mean marketing, sales, and customer success sort of kind of in one. There's a missing element of talent. And so we've had this really cool opportunity at Lead Coverage over the last 8 or 9 years to take the best in class of what SaaS is offering. And so when I say SaaS, I mean fintech, edtech, martech, and really take what they're doing well and bring it to the supply chain space. What we've seen in the marketplace and the martech marketplace is no one's really paying attention to supply chain. So HubSpot doesn't really care. ZoomInfo doesn't really care, right? No one pays attention to this $2 trillion market. So our ability to sort of bring the best in class that's working for the SaaS environment into the supply chain space it's been great for everyone, right? It's been great for the SaaS sort of vendors that we're bringing into this $2 trillion market. It's been great for the supply chain clients that we're serving because they get access to these better tools. And we're serving sort of all corners of this marketplace and really making market leaders out of everyone. And so we just wanted to put it out there and make this available to everyone. If you can read the book and execute what we do every day yourself, awesome. Like if you take 10% of what the book says and you put it into action and it drives revenue or it drives a more meaningful impact for your go-to-market team, like that's great. Or if you happen to read it and think, oh, I should just hire this chick to do this for me, that's also great. Look, I'll take all of the above. But I think, leaving a legacy that we can leave behind and like really have something to put your head on and say, okay, I did this thing and this is what we're going to leave behind is a big piece of it too.
I 1,000% love that. And you had something that you brought up pretty early on that was having sales and marketing work hand in hand, which is essentially kind of, in my experience, non-existent. I typically find them yelling at each other and being mad at each other, and just generally just not what I would call a positive working relationship. But kind of why do you think that marketing and sales don't typically see eye to eye on things?
So Kara Brown, my perspective is that we are not aligned on the math of the business before we start executing what we're executing, right? A lot of the marketers that I talk to, usually when I'm interviewing people to come work for us, are unaware of the unit economics of the business. So you need to understand the value of each potential customer, either ARR, annual run rate, or LTV, lifetime value. I don't really care which. Just kind of know that number. And then how fast and how many, right? So volume, velocity, and value per each, like this unit economics sort of piece. And what I find is a lot of the marketers don't have any awareness of what the unit economics are of their business. And so when you go to give leads or input or influence to the sales team, you're coming to the table with kind of a you're not coming to the table with a clear point of view that matches what the sales point of view is. And so I think in the book I talk a lot about like your sales leadership team has a number. They know the number, right? They know it. If you don't know it, ask. And if they won't tell you for whatever reason, make it up, right? But you need to show up to the table with a point of view on volume, velocity, and value, and how the marketing team can attribute to the sales team. We still see to this day, Mary, even when lead coverage delivers leads, and this is part of the business, is it's not the only thing we do, but we do deliver leads. We still get the sales team saying, well, I went to high school with the dog walker's uncle of that guy, so you don't get credit. And we're like, cool. The email that we sent to this person on Tuesday is the reason that you have a meeting. Like the dog walker's aunt's nephew's brother-in-law isn't the reason. Like I'm not asking for credit. And I think sometimes, specifically in freight, the sales guy needs to own it. Like he needs to say, like, this is mine. And the marketing team isn't saying that you're not responsible. Like that's at least our position is, I'm not responsible for if you close this, it's your commission. Like I'm not taking from you, but can I get like 5% attribution for doing a good job? Like, can you give me like can you salute and say like, thank you for the lead, right? Like, and so I think the more and more the marketing team show up with a point of view that is based in math and that they are serving the sales team and you're all speaking the same language, the easier the two teams can connect.
I 1,000% agree. Because it's like, again, everyone is so, and I think a lot of that comes from the culture of, specifically, you'll see it a lot in freight brokerages or freight tech, is that everyone's has a brokerage history. Everyone has that really aggressive, like maybe you probably saw it on the floor if someone was scared to go to lunch because they thought someone was going to come in and swoop up and steal their load. So it's really one of those, that's one of those where like everyone's on the same team. I'm not trying to come in and steal your sale. I'm just trying to say, okay, what went well about your sale? What was easy? What are some of the pain points that someone had, or like a hurdle? Because if there's a hurdle for that person, there's probably hurdles for them. And if I can get any messaging out there, or if I can have, someone out there in an interview or with like a sponsored piece that's like, oh, here's how we overcome these hurdles, then I can do that to make your job easier. And like, again, I'm not asking for a cut of your salary. I'm just asking to please stop cutting the marketing budget.
Yeah. I think where we see the marketing budgets increased is when the leadership team sees the impact that marketing is making at the top of the funnel. I think the way that we sort of measure our success is bottom of funnel revenue generation, right? But there's so much energy and effort between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel. And a lot of, shouldn't say it that way, but a lot of the prospects we talk to have no math between the top and the bottom of the funnel. They have no idea what their conversion ratio is from the first time that someone identifies you as a potential vendor and the deal closing. And so we spend a lot of time kind of helping with that. Like, hey, let's really understand the velocity of how long it takes to get a deal closed. Let's track our activity and make sure we know how many times we're reaching out to these potential customers, right? And everybody's different. Every customer is different. Every brokerage is different. Every freight tech company is different, right? No one is the same. But the philosophy of share good news, track the interest of the humans who could be interested in that good news, and then follow up often and in different verticals, different modes, is like, this is true in any B2B environment and any of the kinds of clients that we work with.
1,000%. It's like, I get so mad when people are like so combative or like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to help out marketing. I don't want to do that. And it's like, they shouldn't have to pull teeth to be like, okay, well, you're on these sales calls. You're on these customer calls. What are things people are complaining about? What are things people didn't know that we offered as a service? Like, everyone, like at the risk of being like, hold hands and sing kumbaya. If we could just all hold hands and sing kumbaya, it'd be a lot better.
Yeah, we don't usually sing kumbaya with clients, but I would be happy to sing kumbaya. I think that I think math is the most important piece, and like in the book, we have the whole third, the last third of the book is all math. And I was talking to someone yesterday. I think I have a blog post about this coming out soon. That I wish I could have written the book backwards. So the book is the philosophy: share good news, track interest, follow up. The second piece is the 3 funnels. So we split the funnel into 3, which is the prospect funnel, which is strangers, the nurture funnel, which is where the magic happens, and then the customer funnel, which is cross-sell and upsell. And the last third of the book is how to measure it all: volume, velocity, and value. And for our specific space, I wish I could rewrite the book and do measurement first and then the rest later. It wouldn't make any sense to write it that way, but so much of what we miss and so much of what is missed between marketing and sales inside of the logistics space is because we're not aligned on the math. And so there's like the last 20 pages of the last chapter is like the real meat. And I'm just afraid that people don't get to it, right? They're like, I'm kind of done after like chapter 5 or whatever. And they don't get to like the real meat of how to prove the value of what you've been doing. And so we'll put out a workbook, and we'll, make sure that the math part is a little more accessible, I think, in the future.
I like that. It's because you do touch on it, and it is interesting because it brings up that thing of, okay, yes, marketing tracks everything, and your clicks and how many times your web page is visited and how many people opened an email blast or whatever. But then that's also a difference between, okay, you have those clicks, but then what do you do after that? How many of them opened an email? How many of them followed through? And that is where, especially with the rise of different analytic platforms like you've mentioned, HubSpot and other ones. There's so much data out there that I think people are just kind of I don't say forgetting, but not realizing that like that's all like data you can bring in that you can then, say, okay, well, we had a 20% open rate, and of that 20% open rates, 15 of them landed on our website, which converted to 5% of them filling out a contact us form. And I think that shows that like, hey, okay, this was really effective. And for you might not be able to have it for every campaign, but for most of them, you have that kind of feedback and that thing that you can take back and say, hey, this actually was really successful. We should do more things like this.
So the other piece, you mentioned data, there's not a ton of this in the book because we're sort of formulating our opinion on this year, and the book was written last year, but it's intent data. So I've sort of been on this intent data kick, and I'm really excited about it. And I think there's 2 forms of intent data. I'm going to tell you a little story. It's in the book. Your listeners can kind of use this if they want it. And I've said this before on FreightWaves TV too. When Tim Cook gets on stage in November of 2026 and he announces that he's insourcing his supply chain, and he like blows up anyone who touches Apple. He doesn't get up that morning and think, I'm going to go blow up my supply chain vendors today. Like, that sounds fun, right? And let's go ruin everybody's day. That decision was made by a Tiger team in Cupertino now, right? Like, they are currently they're downloading Gartner Gartner Magic Quadrants on TMS, WMS, OMS. How do I buy a fleet? Where should I put my warehouses? And that's happening right now. That intent data we can see. And so you're talking about like what happens, first party intent is what happens in your ecosystem, in your HubSpot. So they enter my ecosystem, they show up, they're searching on my website, they're hitting my social media posts. But the third party intent data is about the rest of the universe. So they're searching my competitors' websites. And even more importantly is really like other stuff. So they're the breadcrumbs that tell us that something is happening. So if someone is standing up a new warehouse, let's just say in the Midwest, they're going to need new broker relationships to service that new box, right? So there are breadcrumbs that are obviously happening inside of the intent ecosystem for that. And this is what I'm calling macro intent. So these intent tools, this is Sixth Sense, Demand-Based, Rollworks. There's a whole bunch of them. And if you Google ABM intent tools, you'll get a whole list. Those are macro tools. So they're doing this for us in supply chain. They're also doing it for healthcare, and they're doing it for tech, and they're doing it for banking, right? So they're kind of macro tools. They're searching everything for everyone. What I'm really excited about is what I'm calling single stream intent. And it's like kind of starting, but it's going to continue to be a thing that we're talking about. The guys at Carrier Source are doing a really good job. They're now selling single stream intent. I think the guys at Genlogs have something really cool going on. They will have intent, right? Like there are different pieces of single stream intent that are going to kind of bubble out of what's going on in the investment ecosystem of freight. And when we think about single stream intent is how do we get this single stream of every Wednesday, Coca-Cola's looking for a truck in Des Moines, right? Like that's single stream intent. Someone get in front of them and tell them that you have a truck in Des Moines every Wednesday. So you can now buy this, but what do you do with it when you have it? So it goes back to your point of we all have all this data. What do you do with it? And so if you can capture that intent data and package it up for your sales team, another way that sales and marketing can become better friends, right? Is I give to you, Mr. Salesperson, a dossier. Here is the company. This is how many times they're looking for loads. This is where they're looking for them. These are the keywords that we're seeing. Now go call them, follow up, and see if we can get on the next RFP, right? And so that's happening. And that's how sales and marketing can kind of join efforts to be a real go-to-market engine. The other piece that's really sexy about intent data is the ability to retain your current customers. So there's 3 ways to grow in logistics. New logos, really, really hard, super hard. Keep your current customers can feel hard. That can feel really, really difficult. I have a tool to help. And then lastly is to cross-sell, upsell your current customers. So basically ask for more freight, right? Like ask for more. And so we use the intent tools like Sixth Sense and Rollworks. We load up your list of current customers, and then we load up your list of competitors as your keywords. And if you've had a service failure or if you're seeing changes in your customers' dynamics, maybe their lanes are changing or they haven't given you quite as much freight as you thought they were going to, let's take a look at the intent signals of your current customers and see if we can ask for more freight in different places. So I think if the marketing team can understand the unit economics, they can bring some of these tools to the table, and they can empower the sales team with a dossier and information, market information about these customers or future customers, then they really do end up with a seat at the table.
100. I think that is like, that really just kind of takes everything and just kind of wraps it up in like a nice little bow of, there's so much data and there's so much information out there. It's truly just how you utilize it. But then also that being said, like, you don't have to go spend $1 million to go get all of this information. It'll take time, but if you just start collecting with, okay, someone lands on my website. Maybe I collect their email. Maybe I collect something about them. Maybe I collect the company that they work for or something. And that gives you a place to start. Because again, empires aren't built overnight, and neither is the most perfect marketing system. But also as a salesperson, if I was handed basically a cheat sheet on everything this company was looking for, smash, immediate smash. And then that means sales gets money, which means that marketing gets to keep a job.
I appreciate what you said about making things easier, right? I think the democratization of these tools over the last 15 or 20 years is the only reason that my company exists, right? Like HubSpot wasn't a thing when I started at Echo 1 million years ago, right? Salesforce wasn't a thing. So that's how old I am. But now we have these. Even the smallest companies, even SMBs, can have access to these tools because they're just becoming ubiquitous, and it's awesome that anyone can have access to this stuff. And so I think if you're interested, and you're interested in intent data or preparing the business to accept intent data is probably the biggest hindrance, because if you don't have a really strong CRM tech stack, it's kind of hard to pull it all together. But it's also becoming really cheap. I mean, HubSpot's you can do HubSpot $4 or $5 grand a month. It's not, and that's expensive actually. It's really not hard to set these tools up, and they become a little bit DIY too.
Yeah. And you can kind of get out of it what you put into it, which is great because especially if you don't know what you're doing, you got to start somewhere. Well, let's just start. Let's just start there. But on the opposite end of starting, we are finishing our chat today. But we've recently transitioned to a new final question, and it's still pretty early on. So, Kara, I'm very much looking forward to it. We've had a wide variety of answers. So, if you could build a house out of any food, what would it be?
I've been thinking about this while we've been talking, and I think I have to say pasta.
Ooh,
right? Because
like any
I
specific
think it
type of
might actually
pasta?
work. No, like just anything that has gluten in it, really. I mean, like I'm even okay with the gluten-free pasta mostly, but like this girl needs some carbs. Like I like love the idea of just like being able to like take some pasta off the wall, like really kind of gets me excited.
Just like, oh, I need lunch today. Walks
Yeah,
over
and
with a
just
bowl and just scoops it off the wall.
yes, like as a point, when you said it, I was like, oh man, like what would I want to just like take off the wall and like put in a bowl? And I thought about this answer. I was like, pasta's gonna make me seem like a carbaholic, which I am. I was like, I should probably say like salad, just to sound like some like dainty. I'm not, but I'm not. Like salad would suck. Like I don't want a house made of salad. I want a house made of like spaghetti. Like give me like a heart, and like throw a meatball on top. Yeah.
Because then each room could be like a different sauce.
Yes.
Like
right?
a green room would be like a pesto. You could have an Alfredo. Like
my children would be very down for this too. They're also very much into pasta and sauces, which is probably why the other piece of me is like, how can I make this easy on my life? Like, oh, just have a house
get
made of
kids
pasta.
here for bowl. Go ahead and get your
exactly.
dinner.
Just go do it yourself. I don't have to feed you tonight. Just take some out of the laundry room, right? Like, I don't know.
I absolutely love that. I think that's so far my favorite one. Because we've had some classics like a gingerbread situation, which like would be a very sturdy house, but not a very delicious house.
No, plus like gingerbread gets kind of stale pretty fast. You ever tried to eat the gingerbread house that like you buy from Target? Like it's not like they're definitely 5 years old. Like they're not new gingerbread.
Nope. But it's funny because in theory, no one's eating them. They're just eating the like sugar decorations that come with it.
Except for my children. My children definitely try to eat them.
Interesting.
Kids do. Like that's, they're like, whoa, how does this taste? You're like, that's not made for that. But
Can we just not immediately start licking things?
Yeah, don't lick things. But if the house was made of pasta, go to town, right? Like enjoy that.
So if anyone has any, floor plans for a pasta house, or if they have any questions on kind of the math behind the marketing, where can they find you outside the show?
I am very visible on LinkedIn. You kind of can't miss me. I actually got a phone call the day before the book launched, and this person said, would you please get out of my LinkedIn feed, which was hilarious. And I told him tomorrow the book launches and I will take a break from LinkedIn. So you'll start to see me again in a couple of days. We took a little break. I'm very available on LinkedIn. You can also find us at leadcoverage.com. And I'm Kara, Kara, at leadcoverage.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, dear.
You can catch other episodes of Check Call right here on FreightWaves TV or YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out the other incredible FreightWaves shows, and I'll see you on the internet.